You're listening to the School of Hard Knock Knocks podcast with me, Maury Morgan.
Ladies and gentlemen, your next comedian.
Shouldn't drink on an empty head, you know that, don't you?
That is the shittiest heckle I have ever heard in my life.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
What's a bucket list?
You have dangerously underprepared yourself for the shit that is about to get real.
There's something funny about Irish accents, frizzy hair and beards. This man has them all. He is, of course, Dave Callan. Distilled in Ireland but bottled in Perth, Dave shares an incredible comedic journey from hosting the mid-dawn shift on Triple J to being a regular on TV with Rove and Rove Live. His first Melbourne International Comedy Festival show was in 2001 and titled Dave Callan is Shithouse. But, as you'll hear in this interview, he most certainly is not. Logies, Martin Luther King Jr., accents and drinking with bikies. This episode has it all. So Hard Knock Knockers, here he is, Dave Callan. How are you, Dave?
Hey there, Maury. Very well, thanks.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being with me here today and sharing your insights into the comedy scene.
Oh, no worries.
At the moment, I believe you're in Queensland.
That's right. We're up in Early Beach at the moment. I had a few nights off from the road show, and rather than go back to our respective cities and fly back again, there's no point in that. It would take 2 days, so we're just hanging out, which is nice. Yeah, comedy shows don't tend to sell well on a Monday, Tuesday, so that's why we have a gap.
Ah, there we go. And what's the temperature there at the moment?
Oh, look, I think it's pretty much around the high 20s up here. So I was very happy to get out of Melbourne. It was 10 degrees when we left. And very, very rainy. Melbourne, despite its many pros, weather isn't one of them, so I'm happy to be here in the middle of the year.
Perfect. And you're on Early Beach.
Early Beach, yeah. I like it. It's kind of like a tropical silent hill, if that makes any sense.
Was that pre-Debbie, Cyclone Debbie, or was it always post?
Maybe Cyclone Debbie might have a bit to do with that.
Okay.
I think it's got a sinister undercurrent. I haven't figured out the source of it yet. I think that might
it is Queensland. Is it just blatant racism? That's the undercurrent.
That could be the answer.
There it is. Well, thank you for your time. And so today we're going to learn a little bit about your upbringing, what got you into stand-up comedy. The people that listen to this podcast they're new at stand-up comedy. They're either just entering or they are looking for some advice to get them forward, or they might even be a bucket list ticker, thinking of trying their hand. Yeah, so hopefully you can share some light on some of the challenges that they may be facing.
Stop. Turn back now.
Right.
It's not too late. No, I'm kidding. It's great.
Well, sitting on Early Beach, that's the highlight. One of the pluses of stand-up comedy.
Definitely a career highlight for me, yeah.
You're originally from Ireland. You came over in your teens, I believe?
Yeah, I was born there. So I kind of reached the ripe old age of 15, and the parents were emigrating, so I came along.
Yep.
Did high school and university here in Perth.
Yep.
And they had a comedy club, which I just went along to and had a look. And the reason I went there is because I did a talent competition at uni. And the MC, I did like 5 minutes of stand-up, just kind of random thoughts I had. And the MC was a comedian called David Lenny from Perth, and he ended up being in Summer Heights High. Yeah. He was one of the teachers, so audiences might know him from that. But he said, why don't you come down to the comedy club tonight and do a spot? And of course, back then in the early 90s, there was lots of stage time and hardly any comedians. Now it's the other way around. But it was, come down. And you can jump up on the night, which is unheard of nowadays. And so, to be honest, I didn't want to jump up straight away. I wanted to watch it. So I went along 2 weeks in a row to watch. And then on the third week, I jumped up and did a spot. And I did it blindfolded. So I put on one of those sleeping masks they give you on a flight. And I figured if I couldn't see the audience, I wouldn't be frightened. Unfortunately, I did 2 shows in a row. Unfortunately, the second one didn't go so well. First one, the gimmick worked really well, and the second show, there were these kind of drunk American women talking very loudly, and I thought I was losing the crowd because I couldn't see what was going on. Turned out they were just ordering drinks very kind of noisily, but I basically freaked out and got off stage before I finished.
Right.
So I had one good one and one bad one. And apparently, that's a common thing among comedians starting out. You have a second bad one. And that's the one you need to push through. So if you can push through that second gig to your third, fourth, fifth, you tend to get lots of nervous energy. And I think the universe kind of ordains you a little bit for your first gig, makes it a bit easier. But the second gig's very tough, in my experience, certainly, and that's a pattern I've heard a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I got through it. I kind of had such a great time on my first gig that I wanted to get up and obviously try it without a blindfold on was a big kind of impetus to continue. So third gig got up with no blindfold on, and it went okay. It was probably split the difference between the first and second. It went reasonably well. So I just had this hunger to do it that just propelled me forward, and I didn't really care about money, which I think is another important thing.
Yeah, right. You didn't think of doing a lot of gigs for Vision Australia? That way you wouldn't have to wear the blindfold. They wouldn't be able to see you.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to see me, but I'd be able to see them, you see. I'd be able to see their facial expression.
Oh, that
was basically the reason for the whole blindfold, but I like that.
Yeah, well, I guess you could wear the blindfold. They wouldn't know. You could have been the go-to guy for Vision Australia.
The lucrative Vision Australia market.
That's true. Look, I've never ever heard of a comedian wearing a blindfold or a sleeping mask. That is wacky. Have you done it since?
No, but Laura Davis has. I think Laura Davis, her last festival show, she wore a blindfold for the whole thing. Yeah, as well. So, and she's from Perth as well. I mean, I started a long time before her. I don't think she'd heard of the idea, but it's fun to see those ideas come back through in the kind of the comedian consciousness that we all tap into.
It wasn't just an ice mask and she'd had a big night the night before, a bit puffy.
That's possible. Yeah, maybe so.
Your accent, you came over at 15, you haven't lost it. I'm assuming that it would be stronger had you remained in Ireland. How useful was the Irish accent in the early days of your stand-up comedy?
I think if you have an accent, people tune in a bit more to you. And I think, comedy is about putting information together in your head. So I think if people hear the words you say and don't quite understand them because of the accent, and then a few seconds later they take over and they understand what you said, I think it can make for a bigger laugh. Yep. So that's just from a purely scientific point of view. But from a purely social point of view, I think people do give you a bit of leeway if you have an accent. They're willing to, give you a bit of time and tune in a bit more, like I said. But at the end of the day, you got to deliver. Like, if you have an accent and you're not funny, then people are going to switch off. They're going to not want to see you again. So,
You don't think it's an advantage being Irish or having an Irish accent or having, say, a Kiwi accent? I think Australians just generally find those two accents funny anyway.
Oh, I find the Kiwi accent very funny, just quietly, but that's possibly racist as well. I think there's certain accents that lend themselves to comedy and certain accents that Australians like, and I think I'm lucky in that I'm in that Venn diagram of, Irish accents being funny and Irish people being somebody, a nationality rather, that Australians like because of the history of this country. Yeah. I think in the oppression by Britain and so on. So I think we have definitely a bit of a camaraderie there. I get along very well with Indigenous folks because Irish people encountered very similar treatment from the English. So yeah, there's definitely that. I think if you're going to pick a nationality to be a comedian in this country, I think Irish would probably be at the top of the board on Family Feud.
And the Germans at the bottom.
Well, the poor old Germans. I know a German comedian who's hilarious, but it's very, very rare. Yeah. Very, very few and far between.
Yeah. So you came over at the age of 15 and then you did what we Australians fear the most. You took away Aussie jobs.
Yes, right.
You got on TV. You got on a Rove. You got on Triple J. You were obviously a DJ there and commentator and funny guy. How on earth did someone with the handicap of being new in the country and having a strange accent and whatnot, how did you really become so successful so quickly? What's the secret sauce?
Oh, look, I don't know. I guess with each of those things, I had a passion that drove me. Like, when I grew up in Ireland, I used to listen to the Smiths, The Cure, Depeche Mode, all that indie stuff that was big on Triple J in the 90s and kind of up until the mid-2000s. And so I kind of had a good education in alternative music. And Triple J was basically, that was their charter back then to play all that stuff. So I had a great grounding in that sort of music. I also just tried my hand at different things. Which I reckon is a great bit of advice for up-and-coming comedians. Just try everything, and you never know what might catch fire. Yep. So I did community radio in Perth when I was a teenager. So I did, the equivalent of I guess, Melbourne's Triple R, which was RTR-FM in Perth.
Yep.
Anyway, so I had a bit of grounding in radio, and I guess I met the program director and I think the music director as well. Anyway, the station manager rather, and the music director at a gala after party in 2003, and they were like, when I found out what they did, I was like, oh, I did a community radio show in Perth. I'd love to do Triple J. I love it. It's my favorite station. So they rang me up 2 years later,
Wow.
like 2 years, not 2005, and they're like, oh, you know that chat we had? We'd really like you to do that. And I'm like, remind me what I said again.
What a crap HR department.
That's the ABC for you.
What you're saying is when we get rejected from a job that we apply for and they send us that letter that says, but we will keep your letter on file, you're actually saying that they do.
Generally not, but on some occasions, yes. And with Rove Live, I mean, we just started comedy within about 3 weeks of each other in Perth.
I know, he's from Perth as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
I should say John Henry Michael McManus, also known as Rove McManus, is from Perth as well.
He was from Willerton in WA. He was at uni and I was at uni, and we just kind of, for some reason, got called to do comedy by the comedy gods within a few weeks of each other. So we just kind of came up together, just trying out material and doing the kind of Wednesday, Thursday night at this particular comedy club. And so when he got a show, I was in London. I moved to London for about 6 months to do comedy, and I got a terrible cold. I think it was pneumonia. I was pretty much over being in the UK. It was getting very cold. It was getting towards winter. Yeah. Of course, getting towards summer over here. And Rove rang up and said, I've been given a series by Channel 9. I'd love you to be part of it. So I was like, I will definitely fly back for that. Yeah. No problem. So, I mean, it's a combination of luck, knowing certain people, and trying your hand at everything. Yeah,
so that's advice that you'd give to up-and-coming stand-up comedians, that they should just get to know everyone within the industry?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's a really good bit of advice. Get to know everyone, and also be nice to everyone. I know there's people who are a pain in the arse that are rude. Never be rude back. Always kind of be civil and don't fight back, I reckon, is a good bit of advice as well, because we're all connected and you never know who's going to be who or who's going to stop being a dickhead at a certain point. Right. And get their shit together and be a nice person suddenly. And if you've had a feud with them, it's hard to repair. Understand that. I would say, look, I'm stereotyping, but within the industry of stand-up comedy, stand-up comedians in general have to be some of the nicest people I've ever met. Yeah, look, you've obviously the good ones. It's a mixed bag. I mean, generally, there's some amazing people out there, and they have to be, because they're always thinking of ways to make the world better and thinking of ways to make society better, and reflecting on, some of the bad things that happen that, they can address through messages, through comedy. But there's also a few assholes. There's more than a few. I think it was Steve Martin who famously said, after you become famous, and sometimes people change when they do get a bit of fame, but he said, after you become famous, you have 2 years to be an absolute arsehole. Right. And if you're still an arsehole after that 2 years, then it's unfortunately permanent. Yeah. And rumor has it he was specifically talking about Chevy Chase, who apparently didn't stop being an arsehole after 2 years. Yeah. I mean, they were inseparable. They were comedy duos, weren't they? Yeah, they definitely came up together as well in the late 70s. So how's your relationship with Rove then? Oh, great. I'm going to pop up and do he's doing a show called Whovians on ABC2, so I'm going to pop up and do a spot on that. We catch up whenever we're in town together. So. He got over that 2 year window period then? He never even had 2 years to be an arsehole. He did not change. He was always, the genuine Rove that I always knew, and the down-to-earth kind of good bloke, yeah. Oh, they're good. Well, that comment I just made was certainly a leading question so that you could just share your love for Rove. Yeah, so who is your favourite? Obviously, Rove's a funny guy. Be a bit weird if he was your favourite comedian, but do you have any favourite comedians? Yeah, sure. I mean, I just love whatever's new, whatever the zeitgeist is, whatever kind of people are coming through who are hilarious. And there's a new guy called Tom Walker who's very surreal and very, very funny. He's just laugh out loud funny. He just does the most random kind of things to use a teenage expression. He's so random. Also, Sam Simmons. I just like people who do stuff that's different to stand-up particularly when it's really kind of absurd. It really makes me laugh, and it really surprises me, because at this point, after 24 years, very little in straight stand-up kind of surprises me at this point. So you kind of hear variations of the same stuff happening over and over again. So I like physical stuff. I like absurd stuff.
Oh, good. Well, I did interview Tim Ferguson from the Doug Anthony All-Stars. Did you ever get into them?
Oh, of course. I was a huge fan when I first came to this country. I turned on the TV in like 1990, and I think The Big Gig was on.
Yep.
And they used to headline every episode of The Big Gig. And I used to record them on VHS and watch them over and over again. Massive fan of the Doug Anthony All-Stars. They were one of the first Aussie acts to make it big in Edinburgh. And just nothing but respect.
Yeah, Tim, was a complete arsehole on stage, but off stage, he's the nicest fellow. Yeah,
that's amazing, isn't it? It just goes to show you what, how they kind of manufacture a kind of a character and a dynamic on stage that may not be the case in reality.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've done TV, you've done radio, you've done lots of stand-up. You were just recently, your Melbourne International Comedy Festival, you did a lineup with three of you in total?
Yeah, that's right. I decided to take a year off just to take a step back, because I've been doing it since 2000. And I got asked to do a bunch of stuff. So that included the Showcase show at the Comics Lounge, which was great fun. Adam Rosenbach supported and Ben Lomas was MC.
Right.
And I got to bring, I work with backup dancers for my festival show, so I got to bring them on board and do like little 15-minute spots.
Yep.
So it was great fun.
Did you choose those guys because they're not as funny as you, so it makes you look good?
I think I came on last. I came on board last, so I think maybe they chose me deliberately. I'm not sure. Yeah. But do you know what happened? Dave Hughes was doing the Logies, so he was hosting the Logies, and we see, this is a bit of a peek behind the curtain, but we see, Hughesy turn up on the Logies and deliver material that just, lights the place up, and you're like, oh, he's such a natural, it's so easy for him. The reality is, for this year anyway, he came to the Comics Lounge every single night of the last maybe 2 weeks, of the last fortnight.
Yeah.
And he did that same set every night, so for about 10 shows, and he tweaked it and he refined it and he found out where the laughs were, and he adjusted over the various shows. And he ended up basically working up his Logie set live in front of us every night, which was fascinating. But it was kind of challenging because someone says, oh, there's a special guest in, and the audience is like, oh yeah, whatever, it's probably some random comedian from somewhere around the festival. And they're like, it's Dave Hughes, and the crowd just light up. I've never seen anybody get such a great response initially for their introduction. So he comes on, he was always every night, he was always like, oh Dave, is it all right, do you mind me going on in front of you? Because some comedians hate that. They don't want someone really high profile and essentially brilliant going on before them. Like, honestly, mate, it's a smorgasbord out there. It's all you can eat buffet. So I'm so happy to have you here, and the more the merrier. And the reality is, I was this year anyway doing something very different with the backup dancers. We were doing kind of physical stuff and non-verbal stuff. So Husey was a perfect complement to that. He'd get up and do his 5 to 10 of Logie's kind of stuff. The crowd would get so excited, and then I got to come on and dance like an idiot to bring it home with a bit of colour and movement. So, it ended up being the perfect show. It was fantastic.
Yeah, no, you've done well. What Dave did in what you're emphasising, he practiced, and he practiced to a live audience. I've heard that from a number of stand-up comedians who just say, you just repeat it, refine it, get it perfect. But it's not just restricted to stand-up comedians. I mean, even Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream presentation that he gave in Washington to hundreds of thousands of people.
Yep.
He had repeated that speech was repeated countless times before it became famous.
So did he? Wow! So had he done it in front of live audiences?
Yeah, he had. So he'd been on the tour, and I don't know the specifics of it, but he'd been touring the different churches and the same story. And I think someone had come up to him and said, look, we love the speech. Can you do it to a slightly larger audience?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
A bit of a shock.
Slightly larger.
Yeah. The Comics Lounge wouldn't take that many people, would it?
Isn't that amazing that that was part of his kind of rope or part of his shtick, and then he did it on their request in front of a large audience. and it went down in history, whereas in front of those smaller crowds, it didn't.
Yeah.
But a great example of how, you can't just have a speech appear fully formed. It can't just appear, spontaneously. You got to work on stuff. And that's what people don't know. They see the Logies or they see a comedian do a show and they think it's off the top of their head. And the reality is it's cultivated and it's curated and it's completely worked over and shone up over a countless nights of kind of experimentation and revising to become what it is. And I think Martin Luther King's speech, I didn't know that, is a great example. Brilliant.
Yeah, not very funny, mind you. Is it one joke every 12 seconds?
The last per minute weren't particularly good at all.
They were not. A little bit depressing, to be honest, in some parts, yeah. So you come from a family, you've got some brothers, you come from a family, what a ridiculous statement
Yeah,
that
I think most of us really do, don't we?
That is right. You come from an Irish family. I believe you've got two brothers who are...
Yeah, two brothers, correct, yeah. So both younger than me.
Yeah.
5 years younger and 7 years younger, both musicians. So I don't know why I didn't get any musical ability, or maybe I'm just ignoring it, but...
maybe got dance ability.
Yes, maybe I could be their dancer if they form a band.
Yeah. Do they have the long hair, bearded look as well, or are they completely different styles?
Yeah, they both have long hair and beards. It's quite funny, actually. We're kind of like the Hair Bear bunch.
Yeah. You're like the Bee Gees on a bender.
Yes, that's amazing. I'm going to tell them that, and they're going to love it.
Yeah.
Bee Gees on a bender.
Yeah.
If we ever did a show together, that's what it would be called.
Well, and I believe the two brothers, being younger than you, didn't quite retain that attractive Irish accent. They became a bit more ochre.
Yeah, one of them actually, the youngest one, he was 7 maybe, or 8, and he we had 2 weeks in Australia before we all got sent off to school. So I went into year 10, and my younger brother went into year maybe 5 or 6. The youngest brother went into year 3, and he came home that night with an Aussie accent, one day at school, and he was speaking Aussie, and we were looking at him going, what the hell? Because it was a really bad accent, because he hadn't quite mastered it yet. And he was like, hey, I'm going to have some dinner now, Mum. And we were like, what the fuck is going on?
Was Mum expecting him to, marry a good Irish girl and have a big Irish family, and that dream just dissipated in front of her?
Funny you should mention it, because he has ended up with an Irish girl. Like my brother Chris, he's going out with a girl called Aisling, who is, she's an Irish immigrant as well. So I'm not sure what that's about. Maybe I'm not sure if it's, you stick with your own, or you're drawn to common experience, or it's just white supremacy. I'm not sure.
Yeah, supremacy. That'd be something the Irish would be seeking, though, wouldn't it? They haven't got much of a history.
We got the white without the supremacy, Irish people, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, sad but true. Well, you've done the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. You've headed north away from the cold Melbourne weather. What's in store for Dave Callan over the next couple of days and weeks?
So the next few weeks, going to do a little bit of the roadshow Queensland. So we do Brisbane, we do Caloundra and places like that. Mm-hmm. And then I get a week off. I'm going to go back to Perth to surprise Mum on Mother's Day. Hopefully she doesn't listen to the podcast, but yeah, that might ruin that surprise. But then I'm doing a cruise ship. Don't judge. Sometimes got to pay the bills in between festivals and roadshows and stuff. So there's ships off the coast of Sydney that kind of travel to Noumea and French Caledonia every week. So yeah, I can fill in my calendar with a few of them. And then back on and off the roadshow for a few months, and then in August head off to Edinburgh, slug it out there. And then, pretty much, I might take a month off. I usually take September off. Yep. It's just nice to get to the States or back to Ireland, and then back on the cruise ship circuit until January, when the festivals kick in again.
Yeah, right.
With Perth Fringe World.
Yeah. When you go to Edinburgh, and I assume it's for the Fringe Festival, the Comedy Fringe Festival.
That's it, yeah. That's the one.
When you go to Edinburgh, do you become more Aussie so that you can differentiate yourself?
Oh, it's so confusing nowadays over there. Seriously, there's so many levels from another place that it gets confusing. So I think they were billing me at the Gilded Balloon a few years ago as the Australian Billy Connolly. For some reason, they thought that was a good marketing idea. And then as soon as I opened my mouth, they're like, he's Irish. What the hell's going on? Right. So it gets to be very confusing. There's several levels over there.
Right, so you don't try to channel your 7-year-old brother and be real ochre.
G'day, mates. What's up? What's the ads again, mate?
Yeah, no, it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
You need to bunk up with Chris Franklin for a couple of weeks, maybe.
Oh, I really don't need to do that. I'm kidding. I love Chris. We went on a mining tour
Yep.
in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and it was full on. Like, it was the most full on experience ever. Mining crowds are very tough, and
Yep.
I think we were drinking a lot. There was one time when we were checking out of a hotel and we had to drive like 8 hours somewhere up, because WA is very spread out.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had to drive for 8 hours one day, and I was out drinking with bikers the night before.
Yeah.
I forget which bikie gang, one of the big WA ones. But anyway, I was nowhere to be found the next day. So the support, Dave Williams and Franklin, who was, I think, MC or headline, just couldn't find me anywhere. They were like, we'll have to get his stuff out of his room. So they got the hotel to open up the room, got all my suitcases out, put them in the car, and basically drove out of town thinking Callan's going to have to catch the next train or bus or whatever.
Yeah.
They're driving out of town, and they just saw me on the side of the road. Like, I was literally asleep on the side of the road in a ditch. They saw me, and they just, stopped the car, woke me up, put me in the car, just drove on.
And you have no recollection of how you got there, I assume?
No recollection. I think I fell over and just went, oh, this is nice. Yeah.
This gravel is soft.
Exactly.
So soft.
Not my proudest moment. I'm glad I wasn't eaten by a vulture or some sort of carrion.
Right. So essentially you're saying Chris is a danger because you get drunk, crazily drunk, when he's in your presence.
Well, I did back then when I was a bit of a hard drinker, yeah.
He wasn't lying beside you on the other side of the road, though.
Not on this occasion.
Yeah. Well, you have definitely given us some gold today, Dave. Much appreciative of your time and your insights.
Oh, no, it's been a pleasure.
How would someone get hold of Dave if they want to book you for a gig or a show or for whatever reason? Maybe go out drinking with you and pay your bills?
All of the above sounds good, yeah. So basically, I'm always on Twitter and Facebook. So if you want to private message me on Facebook or send me a tweet, that would be the best way probably to reach me. So Dave Callan tweets, and then if you plug Dave Callan into Facebook, I'll pop up.
Perfect. Well, Dave, thanks very much for your time and enjoy the warmer climate of Queensland.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you. I will indeed. And lovely speaking to you, Murray.